Hey everyone, and happy Monday. Tara Talmadge and Mike Irwin back with another edition of Ask Mike. Mike, what's the hot topic this week?
Oh, you know, it's got to be that football game and referees and
all the calls and no calls.
Replay reviews, looking in the little box and all the crazy stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of angry people out there, but not just at Arkansas. How about Knoxville? They're at least Razorback fans didn't do what they did. They were really mad.
I understand they're mad. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to all that.
We'll talk about it later. All right, so our first question this week comes from the Hawk Hawkins, who says, I accept your explanation last week of why our defense is having problems. We've faced 3 really good run-pass quarterbacks, but there have to be other factors.
Yeah, I would say there's other factors. I think you start with injuries. We didn't find out until this week. We knew Catalan hadn't been Catalan.
Right.
I mean, the last good game he had was A&M. I think he got hurt. He aggravated a shoulder injury against them at some point in that game. And then he obviously didn't play all that well against Georgia and didn't play well against Ole Miss, and then he didn't play against Auburn at all. And now he's out for the year. So when you lose a guy like that, I think it's going to have a huge impact on your defense.
I agree.
But there are other guys that are hurt. Utsy's hurt.
Yep.
He's out right now. And Sam Pittman said after the game, and then he said, I think he talked about it more on Monday, just about the overall general state of guys being beat up and needing time to rest. You know, they went for more depth this year, and I think they have it, but not enough.
No.
I just think this is one of the continuing issues that Arkansas is going to have, and everybody got ahead of themselves a little bit about the 4-0 start, and you beat Texas and you beat A&M, and
but we want Bama.
Yeah, we're ready to take on Georgia and Alabama and all that stuff. And when you watch a lot of it, and I would invite Razorback fans to watch as many SEC games as possible because you don't want to have tunnel vision.
Yeah.
You want to know what's out there. And when you watch games every weekend all over the SEC, here's what strikes me. Huge stadiums. We think, okay, we've had 2 crowds of 72, 73, 74,000. That's about as big as you can have. Come on, A&M 105,000, Knoxville 98, 100,000. Alabama has right at 100,000 every weekend. Georgia's like 92,000. You have all of these massive stadiums with people going bonkers. And look at LSU. LSU is now going to fire Ed Orgeron 2 years after they won the national championship. They're going to pay him $17 million. They just got money to throw around. We'll get rid of this clown.
Right.
Because if Arkansas had a guy won a national championship, do you think he would ever be fired? They would just keep saying, oh, well, they're going to be better this year.
Definitely not after 2 years.
So trying to do what Sam Pittman is trying to do is not going to happen overnight.
No.
And they don't have the depth that they need to have, and they're trying to get it. But this team, even when guys aren't injured, when guys are beat up like Catalan trying to play because he's hurt, it just affects what you're doing. And you're playing this brutal SEC. Look, when I looked at the SEC schedule that Arkansas was playing sometime last winter, when I saw the schedule for this year, I went, when is Sam Pittman going to get a break? Because once again, it was voted the toughest schedule in college football. And people just blew that off when they won those first 4 games like, you're not playing that schedule. Yeah, you are. And you still got to play a really good Auburn team. You got to play a really good Ole Miss team. You got to play the best team in the country in Georgia and probably the 2nd or 3rd best team in Alabama. You're going to have to play them. And, oh, by the way, Mississippi State, even though the passing game is inconsistent, that game scares me because of how well they throw the ball.
That's a good point.
I watched them against Alabama. I watched the replay of that game. Their quarterback is inconsistent, and when he's throwing against Alabama's secondary, you make just a little mistake and they will make you pay. But can Arkansas do that to him? That's going to be a tough game, Mississippi State. LSU's suddenly playing a lot better. That's going to be a tough game. That's on the road. So this never gets easy.
No.
And you've got to constantly be recruiting, and you got to constantly try to get the depth that you need. And other teams are getting 4 and 5 stars, and you're getting 3 and 4 stars. And yet your fans are going, well, how long is it going to be till we compete for an SEC title? If they wanted my opinion, and they don't, and I don't want to depress people, but if I'm the AD and I see this, and I know that long-term Arkansas fans want 9 and 10-win seasons. I'm getting out of this conference. You look at Texas San Antonio. They're in the top 25 because they're undefeated. Do you think if they were in the SEC, they would be undefeated? They probably have 4 or 5 losses right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is just being in this conference, which everybody's trying to win. And it's so competitive. Everybody's trying to do what you're trying to do. Tennessee is trying to rebuild like Arkansas is trying to rebuild. Why do you think their fans got so mad the other night? Because they thought, hey, this is our big chance. We'll beat Ole Miss. We're back. And then they're sitting there watching, they're going, wait a minute, what are the refs doing? And then they go bonkers. So that's happening everywhere. So there were other factors. There was, and you know, really, every once in a while, could you just get a random break? The biggest play of that game was the fact that it's an 11 a.m. game, and you've got Perotti, who's back there for one reason. He always fields the punt.
Yeah.
And when that thing dropped, I went, uh-oh, he's in the north end zone. I bet he lost that in the sun. And what happened? So the one time he lets a punt drop, what happens to it?
Yeah.
Takes off, goes backwards to the 11-yard line, which caused a series of events, which ended up with an Auburn touchdown. That's not on Arkansas's defense.
No.
That changed the entire game. So, you know.
Moral of the story, there's a lot of factors in play.
There's a lot of factors. Injuries, weird calls by referees, strange random things happening. I would just say this right now. I'm not saying Ole Miss is not good.
Okay.
But right now, Lane Kiffin is living on borrowed time because they just get break after break after break, and it's going to come to an end at some point.
Maybe
it's got to.
When Matt Corral leaves a little bit?
Well, maybe this year. That's what I'm saying. They're due to have a game where the calls go against them, where random things happen against them. Because right now they're living he's always praying at the end of the game, and it works out for him. I'm telling you, there's a Tennessee. I didn't see any way they could come back. There was under a minute to go, and Ole Miss had the ball with the lead, and I'm thinking, there's just no way. And then they called to use the timeouts, got the ball back. That ball is thrown that much too high, or that Tennessee, I think it was a tight end, catches the ball in the end zone. Tennessee wins. That's the margin of error in Ole Miss winning that game and Tennessee losing that game. So that's what I'm talking about with Lane Kiffin. Just that pass is 2 inches down, and they lose that game. So.
All right, let's get to our next question. Hob Hog wants to know, is there an unwritten rule for how many times a team plays the 11 a.m. early game? I know TV rules sports these days, but it sure seems Hogs getting 3 in a row so far is something that never happens to others. More SEC love, or is it out of the conference's control? And now this will be their 4th straight.
Yes, 4th. I wouldn't say that it's out of the conference's control. I'm not sure what would happen if Sankey could step in every once in a while and say, wait a minute, and tell the TP people, look, we can't keep putting this team on at 11 a.m. I'm not sure how that works. On the surface, it is the network people.
Yes. And
what's been happening to Arkansas is that they've been having these games that are attractive, but they may not be the marquee game that CBS would want at 2:30.
Right.
Or that ESPN would want in its prime time. But remember that CBS and ESPN go against each other at noon Eastern, 11. So they're each trying to put a good game on there to draw people away. So that's what's been happening to Arkansas now. And last year, Arkansas got the 11 a.m. game because they were terrible.
Right.
This year, they're getting it because it's kind of like, well, we need somebody to start off our coverage, and this Arkansas-Auburn game is a good matchup. Now, the UAPB thing, to me, they're terrible, and let's just get this out of the way.
Right.
Now, I will say this. My guess is Sam Pittman doesn't mind the 11 a.m. kickoff for this one because why? Because you get down there early.
Oh, for this specific
Right. You play the game, you get it over with, you go back home, and you get your week off.
Yeah.
As soon as possible. So I don't think he's complaining about this one. But if there are any more, to me, Hunter Yurachek needs to get on his plane, fly to Birmingham, go in Greg Sankey's office and say, hey, you see this thing over here? Is this important, this little memento on your desk? If we get another 11 a.m. game, I'm coming down here and throw that off the wall and break it, you know?
Just write a strongly worded letter.
Yes.
All right, Kevin has our next question and asks, when is enough enough? The BS calls that seem to go against us, especially against Auburn. That was a fumble and total game changer in the first half. That was blatant, and their reason/excuse was a lie. I guess we just take the $40 million SEC check and say thank you. May I have another?
Well, you and I have talked about this. The Auburn game for 2 years in a row now has had this strange explanation that you've never heard before. Last year, the fumble recovery was not ruled a fumble recovery because it was not a part of, quote, continuous football action. I'm sorry. I don't think that Arkansas wandered over to the bench for a while and then ran out and recovered the fumble.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the continuous football action was they blew the whistle, and you made a mistake, so you can't punish Arkansas for that. But they did, and they lost the game. Now, here's a new one. Apparently, if you're a defender and you pick a ball carrier up and his feet go off the ground, he's immediately has lost his forward momentum. Therefore, he can't fumble and it be a fumble because the play's already dead. Never heard that one
just
before.
The weird. It's not like he just lifted him up. He was
grabbed him and he was in the process of tackling somebody. And I don't think you instantaneously lose forward momentum in the process of a tackle. And that's what that all boiled down to. So, I don't know. That was crazy.
They did such a good job. Trey Williams was in there. He just mid-tackle was also focusing on the ball and ripping it from. It was just an impressive play.
If you're a Razorback fan, if you're at this, now this doesn't matter at the stadium because you're kind of trying to figure that, but on TV it's especially annoying because they give all these explanations. I feel like if you're going to watch this game, you need to get a copy of the rules book and be able to go through all these little separate things. I mean, I know that they have interpretation things in the off-season, points of emphasis, and they get together and they say, now this year we're but I don't know if they somehow got together in the off-season and they said, you know, if a player gets his feet lifted off the ground, that's immediate. That's a dead play immediately. Did they do that?
No.
I don't know.
Well, it was interesting. So, last season, the SEC came out and actually put out a statement and apologized and essentially said, our refs were wrong. Not so much this time. Haven't heard anything. So
here's the issue with all. Look, this is the issue with all this. Now I want to preface everything I'm saying, but I don't want to be misunderstood.
Okay.
What those Tennessee fans did at the Ole Miss Tennessee game in Knoxville, that was unacceptable. Anybody that watched it, and I watched it, they were throwing stuff on the field. They could have hurt their own cheerleaders, their own band members, anybody down there. Lane Kiffin got hit with a golf ball on the side of, I think, on his arm or maybe in his leg. So all that's unacceptable. And they probably can go get video and identify some of these people, and they ought to remove them and say, you can never come to a game again. Do that. So that's bad, and they should do something about it. But is the SEC going to address why that happened? Because think about this. All the times I've been to Neyland Stadium, I've never seen anything like that before. All the times I've watched on TV, I don't view Tennessee fans as being crazy and out of control.
No.
I've never seen anything like that.
Actually, one of the least likely ones that I would say are crazy out of control.
If they do that all of a sudden, might you not ask what happened there that caused that? And gee, it's because they thought this is a big game. This game will, if we win this game, maybe we're back. And we've been down for years, and this is important to us. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this game going, what are all these strange calls? What's going on here? So, again, bad officiating, questionable officiating, or what? Push these people into that. And no, it's not acceptable to what they did, but to me, it's a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call for Greg Sankey. Hey, knock, knock, wake up. Arkansas is not the only school mad about this. You got to get these referees doing a better job because fans are, when you say it just means more, it does mean more. And if you're a passionate fan and you think your team is losing a game because of the referees, you know, maybe this needs to be addressed. That's all I'm saying about that.
No, I agree. And it's more than just the refs on the field, too, because they're calling into other people who actually have different views and stuff.
I mean, Tim Tebow basically, you know, tweets that basically Arkansas had the game taken away from it. You have the CBS, these networks employ former referees who've been involved in this process and they're now retired, and they employ them for rules interpretations for situations. And the guy on the game, the Auburn game, basically said on the pass interference call what happened was the referee that was watching whether there was pass interference or not was watching that but did not see where the ball went. And he said what has to happen is the other referees on the crew have to immediately come in and say, yes, there may have been a slight case of pass interference here, but that ball was uncatchable, so they overruled it, and they didn't do it. It was like they were all asleep.
Yeah.
So they just got to get their act together.
All right, Simper A. Hog asks, can you please explain what constitute pass interference and what does not? This seems to be the most subjective call in the game. Sometimes the slightest touch is called, other times the defender is holding the arm of the receiver and it's not called. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it is probably, it may be even more subjective than the holding call, but it's because it's the same thing. And you know, it's who's making the call, who's watching it, and then as we just explained, there's sometimes more to it than whether you think there was pass interference. You have to look and see whether the ball was catchable or not. So here's the thing that just baffles me. So I'm watching the Kentucky-Georgia game.
Okay.
And there's a play in which a Georgia running back is trying to make the line to gain for a first down, and he gets tackled, and they've got that little yellow stripe across the thing. He's that far short. I don't even think there's any question about it. And they do a bad spot and put it up and give him a first down. So Mark Stoops, you know, throws the flag or whatever. I want a timeout. I'm challenging this. So now I'm sitting there watching this game, and it must have gone on for 10 minutes. They're talking, the announcers are talking. You see this dude looking in the little box, and it's just going on, and they're replaying this thing. Every time they show it from every angle, it's short, and you're going, there's no question here.
What's taking them so long?
What's the problem here? And I'm thinking, okay, is this guy watching like cartoons? Is he seeing something in that box that we're not seeing? Is this reruns of Blue Blood or Blue Bloods, or is it like a replay from another game? Is it what's happening here? And then he does that for 10 minutes and then comes back and upholds the original call, so it's a first down, and you're just going, here's what I thought after I saw that. I said, look, there's no point to video reviews anymore. Let's just get rid of them and go back to the old system of you just don't have them. If a ref blows a call, he blows it, because they don't seem to be able to look at this stuff and see what we're clearly seeing on television.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point.
It just makes no sense. It's crazy.
Okay. Pork Soda has the next question, Mike. Wants to know, when is the SEC going to mandate eye exams to the replay officials? How can they look at the same replay as everyone else and see something completely different?
Yeah,
Everyone is just ragging on the refs this week.
It's what we just addressed. It's looking into that thing, and you're asking yourself, what is he looking at?
I know.
I know what I'm seeing as I sit here and watch this on TV. Surely there's no question here.
Well, surely they would be looking at exactly the same thing, and you would think that...
Supposedly a better version of it, maybe, you know?
All the different angles, and you have other people telling you exactly what the rules are and all that. Like, it's just...
Yeah, because they've got guys they're talking to back at some master control. There's guys back there going, no, this is not, blah, 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 look at this. So
it's a lot more to it, but man.
What the point is, there's a lot of people mad about this stuff.
Understandably, I totally get it. I don't think they're going to mandate eye exams, though, anytime
soon. Maybe there should be proof of video. They should have somehow certified that what they're looking at is what we're looking at. Maybe we need to know that they're not watching something else.
Different.
Yeah.
All right. Alex Forhog 88 says, if you had the power to do so, how would you change/improve the game day atmosphere at Razorback Stadium to get the crowd more fired up? We had a great crowd today for a 11 a.m. kickoff, but it was just it wasn't electric like it could be.
First of all, no one should ask me about that, because I wouldn't have a clue. I'm just a football guy. I don't get it.
You don't know how to jazz it up a little bit?
But look, here's the problem, and I understand what he's talking about. And I got into a discussion on Twitter last week, and a bunch of fans got mad, but this is reality. When your program is down like this one has been, you can have a game like the Texas game, and everybody can get all excited.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden you lose a couple of 3 games or whatever, then the energy level goes back down. Now, I think I was happy that it was full, because I didn't know that it would be. Even though Auburn was a big game, I thought after 2 straight losses, they might be down to like 65,000 or whatever, and it was full. So that part was good. But the electric atmosphere, to me, unless you're winning 9, 10 games a year like some programs are and competing for a conference or at least a division championship in the SEC, if you're not doing that, you're not going to have multiple games every year where people are just going nuts. You might have one big game at the most. If you played a Texas and if Alabama came in here and Arkansas was still in contention or something, if you had a couple of games like that, yeah, you're going to fill it up. Yeah, people are going to go bonkers. I mean, I can probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of games that I've seen over the last few years where people went really nuts. You know, the Texas game was one of them. You almost have to go back to that Alabama game in whether 2010, 2011, where they almost beat Alabama in Fayetteville. Those are big games, but they're rare. And what he's talking about is why can't you have more of those? Why can't you have? And I don't think you create that with some kind of, cheerleaders doing something or whatever. You can't fool people.
At the end of the day, it's about the team and people wanting to sit there and watch the team do well. No one really wants to pack the stadium if you know they're going to not have a chance.
You've got to be in a position for where something big is going to happen if you win this game.
Yeah.
And I don't think just, okay, we've lost 2 in a row, so if we win this game, we'll stop a 2-game losing streak. I don't think that gets people all excited.
No.
If beating Auburn meant you got into a first-place tie in the West or something like that, then the atmosphere is more electric. And that's why people were so excited at that Tennessee game. I'm watching that, and those people were going bonkers because they understood the significance if they could beat Ole Miss. So it's the circumstances that create the electric atmosphere, and you can't have that when you're winning. You're trying to come back from a period where you won no SEC games in 2 years and a total of 4.
Yeah, it's not to say that they won't get to that point, though.
He's just now beginning to lift this program out of that.
It hasn't even been 2 years yet, folks.
Yeah.
Let's give it a minute. All right, Hogapalooza wants to know, was anyone hurt in the fall that we haven't had but will have the last part of the season who could make an impact? Who has been recently sidelined because of injury but we should get back soon? And who is out for this season that the depth chart can't replace on paper? It's like a 3-parter right here.
I'm going to need some notes with this.
Let's start with the first one.
Okay, Hudson Henry.
Okay.
He's the guy that's been out pretty much since the start of the season. Hasn't played much. And they've had tight end issues. You know, they need that. That's why they've been moving people to tight end because they need somebody to step up and be able to block but catch the ball. Hudson Henry came back. Now, he actually played a little bit last week, but he was effective this week. Caught 2 passes, one of them for 19 yards. And Sam Pittman said in his Monday press conference, yes, he is going to be a big part of the offense moving forward. So that's your guy that's been hurt, that has an impact, that will have an impact if he continues to play and play well for the rest of the season. Now, who's been hurt and needs to come back, has a chance of coming back? Dalton Wagner is your right tackle that's been out. I think this is not definitive, but it looks like what's going on with him is if you go through this week and then have the open date week for everybody rest, the hope is in that run that you're going to have where you're playing Mississippi State and LSU and Alabama. And Missouri, that he will be back for that, and that will really help the offensive line. And then the same thing with Martell Udsey, is he's hurt too. Now, they haven't said what his injury is, but again, the indication is that if you go this week and then go an open date week, he'll probably be back for that run after that. So that's good. Now, who is out that you can't really replace? That's obvious.
Yeah, it's like that's pretty.
That's Jalen Catalon. I mean, and he's not coming back. There is good news though, because he technically, because of his age, could be NFL draft eligible next year. He could declare for the draft. Sam Pittman said today it's his impression he's not going to, that he is going to come back next year. So you've lost Catalon for the year, and there's no way to replace him. You're just going to have to hope other people. Miles Slusher steps up, and I guess he played pretty well. But you're not going to have a guy like Catalon, and that's going to impact the rest of the year. But at least it looks like you'll get him back for next year.
Yeah, I think it would only benefit him to spend another year at Arkansas. So we'll wait and see. Show Nuff, interesting name, says the improvement that we've seen in our program over the last 2 years is absolutely remarkable. I know that recruiting has been solid, but We are losing a lot from this year's squad. What is your biggest area of concern for the 2022 Hogs?
I would say linebackers at the top of the list because you have a possibility of losing all three of those guys. Grant Morgan is gone.
Yep.
I thought maybe Hayden Henry could come back, but no, he's gone too. We checked, so he's not coming back. The only one of those guys that could possibly come back is Bumper Poole. He would have to use his COVID year, and maybe he will, but that leaves 2 out of the 3. So there's a hole there. And then along the D line, there's a possibility they could lose all of those guys. Utsey, who we mentioned earlier, he can't come back. Trey Williams, he's gone. So you're talking Ridgeway, the nose guard. He's the one that could come back, and they have no indication yet from him that he will.
Right.
He may declare for the draft. So there's a possibility of losing all 3 of those down linemen, and that would be a huge concern if you lose all 3 of them. And then in the O-line, Myron Cunningham and Ty Clary. Clary's not technically a starter, but they've moved him into starting.
Right.
He's very versatile, and every time somebody's gotten hurt, they've moved him around. So those 2 guys will be gone for sure. So what I would basically say is, especially in the trenches, this is where you win or lose in the SEC. And it looks like they're going to take a hit in the trenches.
Yes.
So that would be my concern. And then again at linebacker, because Arkansas, that's the one area that's been solid for 2 years now. So what's the answer? Well, to me, yes, you've had some backup people, especially at linebacker that, that's why this week is important. I think you need to play some of those people.
Actually, it would be good to see.
Yes. But I think they're going to have to go into the portal to replace some of these people. You know, I don't know if it's O-line, D-line, linebacker, whatever, but those are the areas that I see.
Yeah.
There's some others, wide receiver. They're obviously losing a couple of really good wide receivers, and Tyson Morris and Traylon Burks, but they've got a lot of receivers and have recruited well at that position. So the trenches and at linebacker are where I'm concerned.
And I do remember Ridgeway doing an interview, I think it was before the season started, and he was pretty much asked about this. Would he want to come back for an extra year if he didn't do well this season? And obviously the answer, like most guys, is I want to go to the next level.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't present itself in a good way for him, I'm sure he'd come back, but that's not exactly plan A at this point. Wizard of Hogs says, the 5 minutes you spent on the Hogs going to the Cotton Bowl this season was nice, except for one thing. You forgot that the Cotton Bowl is part of the college football playoffs this season. It will host a semifinal game. Hogs not going to go to Dallas this season.
Guilty.
So sad.
Guilty. Here's the thing. Sometimes you can do research and you can't see the forest for the trees. My first inclination when I got asked that question about bowl possibilities is I go to the website that has all of the bowl tie-ins for the SEC. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, if you lose this many games, you can go to this bowl. This many games, you go to that bowl. I'm trying to do all that stuff. And at that time, it looked like Arkansas might possibly end up with just 3 losses. In the SEC, and I just went, wow, Cotton Bowl, and Cotton Bowl's in my head, and I forgot to go look and see if this was the year that it rotated in, and it does. But you know what? That's immaterial because they're not going. Even if this weren't a year, Cotton Bowl is out because
it's out now.
Unless a miracle happens in Tuscaloosa, they're going to lose at least 4 SEC games. So that's 8-4. You might do better than the Liberty Bowl. You might do better than the Texas Bowl, but I think we're looking at something like that. And I know that doesn't excite fans.
Still a bowl game.
But how long has it been since 2016, something like that? Since they went to maybe 2017?
Right. And that's if you're not including, obviously, last year. But that was different.
No, it was 2016, I believe, the Belk Bowl. Was that right?
Yes, the Belk Bowl.
So I think that's the last one. So
which I know everyone has great memories of the Belk Bowl. I'm probably sure everyone would like
lost
something
it
new.
in the second half bowl.
Yeah.
So you don't get excited. I was trying to get everybody excited. Cotton Bowl would be great.
That would be great.
Mainly, I was trying to get you excited because if you got
to go, loved to go.
You would have come back with all these stories about how right I was because the best food you will ever eat.
Yep.
And they even have like a big buffet type thing. And at some point that week, it's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. You go into this big convention center and there's like 5 buffet tables, and it's French buffet, it's Japanese buffet.
That sounds great.
It's German food. It's
everything.
Eskimo food. It's like, I don't know, it's like
a smorgasbord.
Yeah,
of
and you just
everything.
look at it and you go, I've never tried this before, and it was just great. That's all I'm saying. And so I was kind of hoping you'd get to come back and talk about how great that was.
Hopefully we get a chance to go at some point.
Yeah, it's awesome, but not this year.
Nope. All right, Dr. Strange Pork asks, why is it that rare 5-star Arkansas signees seldom pan out? They either have a mediocre career, get injured, or just leave. Now, I'm sure there has been a 5-star that played as advertised, but he would be the exception.
I think he pretty much listed all that I can remember. I think they had a 5-star several years ago that was injured all the time. They had one that just didn't have 5-star ability. He was a D-back and he just wasn't a 5-star. He might have been a 5-star in high school, but he wasn't in college level. And then you had one, Mitch Mustang, who left because of all the off-the-field drama. You know, people have told, to me, D-Mac was a 5-star. I've had people tell me, no, if you go back and look, he was just a 4-star. I'm not going to go back and look and see, I don't care. But if the star rating people rated him a 4 instead of a 5, they don't know stars.
Well, so I mean, these stars don't matter.
Yeah.
They really don't.
He's a Heisman runner-up twice and should have won it once.
Yeah.
And you're telling me he's a 4-star? And look, I watched him in high school. I want to tell you a quick story about D-Mac.
Okay.
I'm at this game in Alma, and the field is just unbelievable. And I get there early because I want to be parked good and, you know, make sure I get down the field and everything. And I got to shoot. So I'm standing there in this fan. I don't know what he has to do with it, but he's down and he goes, ha, 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 put your foot out there on that field. And I'm going, what? And he goes, just put your foot down there. And I put my foot down there, and it went like that far into the ground. I mean, it looked like grass, but it was so wet and muddy. It was just whoosh. So the guy says to me, he goes, yeah, we watered the field all week. And it had been raining anyway. The point was they were fixing to play Darren McFadden,
so
and they wanted him to be slipping and sliding all over the place.
Huh.
So now I'm overshooting. I always shoot when I have to shoot high school games on the visitor side because you're shooting back toward the home stands and there's more energy in the picture. So I'm over on the visitor side at Alma. But D-Mac gets into this thing where he's out wide and he's technically a running back, but he comes out of a flanker position and he's going to catch the ball and then try to turn the corner.
Okay.
And he catches the ball right in front of me and then just whoosh, and I'm like, what? And he gets up and walks back to the huddle. I look where his foot was. It looked like the Grand Canyon. And I'm thinking, oh, man, this guy's not going to be doing anything tonight. So a little bit later in the game, and I've been shooting at that point high school football for about 40 years, so I'm pretty experienced, and I'm used to being able to follow somebody. So he gets the ball in the backfield, and he does one of those off-tackle things that we all later saw him do at Arkansas. I didn't pan fast enough. He just went, whoosh, and I didn't see him, and I'm like, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? And then I pan, oh, he's standing in the end zone. Oh. And it was an early lesson about how fast this guy was.
Okay.
His freshman year, he scored at Georgia, and the Georgia announcer, an experienced guy, just raved about he'd never seen anybody do that, what he did.
Fast.
He would find a seam, he's just gone. And you're going to tell me
he wasn't a 5-star?
He wasn't a 5-star. He was the 5-est 5-star I've ever seen. D-Mac, awesome.
Yeah, well, we'll see if Arkansas gets any more 5-stars here soon. All right, Pat Boat wants to know, after seeing guys like Rocket, DJ, and AJ playing, what happened to Spivey? Was he not an SEC back?
You know, Spivey, I think he was only here a year. I think it may be his freshman year. It was back during the Bielema years. He got in trouble. I think he was like suspended for the Western Kentucky game. And then that was the game in which Chad Morris got fired anyway. And then as I recall, right after the season was over, he hit the portal. And I don't know what happened to him since. But my view of him, thinking, no, he's not in the same league as those guys.
Yeah.
And Arkansas has got some really good backs right now. I don't remember. You got to go all the way back to Felix and D-Mac and 2 or 3 others, Michael Smith, and there was another one. Brain's going dead. But they had 4 guys that could run back then. And you got to go that far back to find a backfield as talented as what they have now, and that really speaks well to the future because they've got some running backs now, and I would not put Spivey in that group.
No, I mean, you think about how good Traylon Smith was last season, and now he's not even playing every snap. You've got these other guys who've come in and played a major role.
That's probably one of the bright spots of the program right now.
Big Hoggard asks, with KJ's outstanding statistical game against Mississippi when he outperformed Matt Corral in every individual stat and counting on his continued improvement this year, do you think that he might have gotten his name amongst the whispers for Heisman hopeful next year?
Well, one minor point. Corral technically had a few more yards rushing.
Technically.
So he didn't win every category. But I get what he's asking.
Yeah.
And yes, he's already got this comparison,
to Cam Newton.
Cam Newton. If he continues to do what he's done, and look, we see him. I was all going crazy after 2 weeks ago, and now he went. I mean, Sam Pittman said on Monday, look, he didn't have a good game against Auburn, but he said it's because he's hurt. He's banged up. And this is part of the problem he's going to have because of the physical nature of the way he plays. He's always going to be dealing with that, to me.
Yeah.
Will he get his name among the candidates? I think he will. Will he win it? No. Here's why he won't win it, because Arkansas is not going to be in a position to get him to win it. You're going to have to be right up there near the top of the SEC for you to have a guy who will win the Heisman. Yeah. And so he's not going to win the Heisman, but he could get his name in there next year.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's just like Grant Morgan said, if they were a top 5 team, he'd absolutely be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. So I agree with that 100%.
All right, last question for you, Mike. Mousetown. They want to know, do you have any funny UAPB stories?
And that's funny itself because they usually get a funny question, funny stories from the opponent, but Arkansas's never played this opponent. So I don't have any personal UAPB funny stories. However, anybody that was around in the mid to late 80s remembers Archie Cooley. He was the UAPB head coach. And it was pretty much crazy back then. There were all these stories, and you never knew how true they were. But there were always stories like it was one of a total football school. Like if you're in the dorm and you want to eat, the football players eat first and everyone else has to eat later. And if they eat up all the food, you don't have any food. I mean, I'm not saying all this happened. There just were these crazy rumors about everything was built around football at that time. And I remember there was one story. He supposedly had a lot of ineligible players. In some cases, guys that weren't enrolled in school, but they were somehow working out, which is in itself about. But you got to understand, this also was not NCAA. This was NAIA. So I don't know what the rules were about some of this stuff. But supposedly they went out one weekend and they played a game, but then somebody found out that a bunch of their other players that weren't eligible played a game against somebody else.
A different game.
So you had one team playing 2 games on a weekend. The NAI eventually came in right around 89, 90, somewhere in there, and gave them the death penalty. They were suspended football for 2 years. I think UAPB and SMU are the only 2 schools that ever had that happen to them. But I would say the good news is they've bounced back. They've got a clean program. They're struggling this year. But in the wild and crazy days of Archie Cooley, a lot of strange things happened back then, and then there were some funny stories, and there would be an Archie Cooley story every week that'd be going around in the media.
Well, that's a good one, though.
Yeah.
Interesting. 2 games in 1 week. Well, we only have 1 game this weekend, and it's Arkansas and UAPB at
Pretty sure they're
Memorial
not
Stadium.
playing someone else at the same time.
Pretty sure. We'll have to double check. All right. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next Monday.